My parents want me to have a secret wedding because my sister is very sensitive and spoiled, but I just listened, have the biggest wedding possible. If you want to spot the golden child in a family, just look at who gets coddled the most when they act out. In my family, that's Bella, beautiful, delicate, and constantly protected. She was raised in an emotional bubble, like the entire world was supposed to revolve around her feelings. While I had cereal for breakfast, Bella got eggs, bacon, and a mountain of validation served to her every morning. Since we were kids, our parents treated her emotions as the center of the universe. Any event that didn't revolve around Bella was seen as a threat. I won't deny there was a time when Bella was genuinely sweet. But everything changed when she hit puberty, and the compliments started shifting to other girls. From then on, she saw every other woman as a rival to be eliminated. Once, I wore a pretty dress to a family dinner, and Bella accidentally spilled red wine all over it. When I got a new job, she cried in the bathroom and said she felt lost. Anytime I had a moment to shine, she had to find a way to dim it. I once brought a boyfriend home, and Bella openly flirted with him right in front of me. Later, she told our parents she was just being polite and friendly. And of course, they believed her because Bella isn't selfish. She's just a fragile little orchid. To them, Bella is never at fault. She's just too sensitive for this harsh world. Meanwhile, I was always expected to be the strong one, the one who sacrificed. Love in our family had a hierarchy, and I was always second in line. So when I got engaged, I braced myself for drama. But I didn't expect my parents to actually campaign for me to have a secret wedding, like I was some kind of hidden mistress. They weren't concerned about my happiness, only about whether Bella would be upset. Jay proposed in the winter, during a beautiful snowy walk. He'd planned a small picnic and picked out a ring months in advance. It was the most peaceful moment I'd ever experienced. But that feeling only lasted a day. When we shared the news over dinner, Bella immediately burst into tears. Not happy tears, tears of, "You can't get married before me." She ran off to the bathroom, muttering something cryptic like the universe had betrayed her. No one said anything, just the sound of my mom sighing and quietly getting up to follow her. And there I was, sitting at the table, holding Jay's hand, feeling like I'd just been slapped by something invisible. Mom sat next to Bella, rubbing her back and whispering that she was still special, still deserved a fairy tale love. My dad looked at me with disappointment in his eyes, like I'd taken something that wasn't mine. I knew that look. It meant he expected me to do the right thing and turn down the proposal. I stayed silent for a few days, hoping everyone would calm down and think more rationally. But then my parents invited me to lunch, wearing the kind of serious faces that usually come with big announcements. And sure enough, they didn't disappoint. "You can still get married," my mom said, "but it would be better to just sign the papers quietly. No need for anyone to know." I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but they stayed dead serious. "Bella's very fragile right now. Don't hurt her more," my dad added. I asked, "So you're telling me to give up the wedding I've dreamed about since I was 15, just because my sister can't handle someone else's happiness?" Mom said they weren't asking for much, just for me not to make a spectacle. "Don't turn this into some performance," she said. A performance. That's what they called my wedding. Like I was planning to ride in on a white horse, throwing roses and screaming in the town square. All I wanted was to celebrate my love, like any other girl. They even used Bella's recent breakup as an excuse, a breakup that she caused by cheating with her boyfriend's best friend. But of course, that part always gets left out, because in every story, Bella's the victim. When we left the restaurant, Jay held my hand tightly and asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded, but inside I wasn't. It felt like something inside me had shattered into dust. I wasn't angry at Bella, at least not then. I was angry at my parents for choosing her over me. Again. But more than angry, I felt betrayed by the people who were supposed to cherish me most. I tried to stay calm for a few more days, thinking I just needed time to decide what to do. But then, as if the universe wanted to send me a sign, the answer came in the most unexpected way. A FaceTime call on speakerphone. I walked into my parents' house unannounced, planning to grab a few old decorations. But as I passed the kitchen, I heard Bella giggling, her phone on speaker. She was telling her best friend. She finally figured out who really matters around here. I froze behind the door, my heart tightening. Her voice rang out again. She agreed to have a quiet wedding, just like I wanted. The smugness in her tone sent a chill down my spine, like it had all been some power game. Right then and there, I made a decision. If I was getting married, I would do it like a queen. Not just a wedding dress, but candelabras, wine, a live band, and a cake that reached the ceiling. I wasn't going to hide my wedding like it was something shameful. That night, I told Jay, my hands still shaking with anger. He listened, then laughed and said, Then let's throw a wedding big enough to get my grandma out of her seat and dancing. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. It felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. We started planning, from the grand ballroom to a full guest list of extended relatives, excluding 3 people, my mom, my dad, and Bella. I wasn't going to hide anymore. If they wanted to pretend I didn't exist to protect Bella's feelings, fine, then I would disappear, into the jazz music and clinking of champagne glasses. The first invitation went out that Monday morning, to my aunt in another state, who had always protected me like her own daughter. I could practically hear her scream with joy when she opened the invite, complete with a dress code and detailed map. I sent more invites to cousins, old classmates, and even the neighbors who used to carry me around as a baby. Each envelope was a declaration. I deserved to be loved and celebrated out loud. And if Bella couldn't handle that, it was no longer my problem. I knew there'd be fallout, and sure enough, a few days later, my mom started calling nonstop. She didn't leave any voicemails, but I could guess what every missed call was about. Eventually, the missed calls turned into a long text, long enough to be the first chapter of a novel. She said I had betrayed the family agreement, hurt Bella, and embarrassed her in front of the relatives. I read it several times, but couldn't find a single line asking if I was happy. Then came an invitation to dinner that Saturday, to have an adult conversation, as my mom phrased it. Jay half joked, half serious. Should we bring popcorn? I nodded and slipped a bag into my purse, already bracing for the worst. That night, Bella was already curled up on the couch under a blanket, like she was recovering from an emotional flu. She didn't look at me, just turned her head away with that familiar expression of performative hurt. I'd seen that look hundreds of times, and it always ended with me getting scolded. My dad didn't beat around the bush. He asked what I was trying to prove with this ridiculous wedding. I answered plainly, that 2 adults in love have a right to celebrate without having to check Bella's mood first. Jay chuckled. My dad didn't. My mom cut in, saying the whole thing I'd planned was over the top, not in line with our family values. She made it sound like I was throwing a royal gala in the middle of a baseball field. I replied calmly, honestly, just hearing you talk wakes me up better than coffee. Then Bella spoke, accusing me of being childish, of acting like an enemy instead of a sister. She wanted me to postpone the wedding a few years, until I've had time to get back on my feet. I just smiled and said, if you're happy for me, I appreciate it. If not, please just stay silent. My dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough. His voice was low and sharp, like he'd been holding it in for years and I'd finally pushed too far by daring to live honestly. I asked quietly, why? Because this is the first time I've said something you don't want to hear? My mom circled back to her favorite line, that Bella was going through a very hard time, and I couldn't possibly understand what she was suffering. I exhaled slowly and said, it's hard to relate when I haven't cheated on my fiancé, crashed someone else's birthday party, or vandalized their car after being rejected. The room went silent, like the power had gone out. I almost forgot, so I added, and I never faked a pregnancy to win someone back. Bella shot up from the couch like she'd been electrocuted, called me petty, and accused me of being jealous because she always gets attention. I laughed coldly. If that's what it takes to get attention, you can have it. My dad stood up, his voice heavy as stone. If you go through with this circus of a wedding, don't expect us to show up. I looked him straight in the eye and said, that's fine. I never planned on sending you an invite anyway. That sentence dropped like a blade, and for the first time, he didn't have anything to say back. My mom stared at me, stunned, like she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. She tried to regain control. You're going to regret this. I tilted my head and smiled. Only if you crash the wedding, so I've made sure the guest list is clear with security. Bella screamed and stormed out of the room, like I'd just set fire to her delicate little heart. No one followed her, for the first time ever. No one got up to comfort her when she fled. And the room suddenly felt cold, despite it being spring outside. Jay squeezed my hand under the table. He didn't say anything, but his eyes were full of pride. I hadn't come to ask permission. I came to state clearly that I was going to live my life. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of being the villain in my family's story. That night, back home, I opened a drawer and took out the one wedding invitation I hadn't written yet. The one I once thought would go to my parents. I wrote 2 words on it. Not needed. Then I lit it on fire on the balcony, the ashes floating away like a quiet goodbye. Jay poured me a glass of wine and handed it over, his gaze as warm as candlelight. I leaned against his shoulder and whispered, I don't know if I'm okay, but I know this is the first time I chose me. He smiled, and I've never seen you shine like this. We kept planning the wedding, with no more holding back, no more feeling like someone was watching from the shadows. Everything started falling into place, almost magically. Like once you stop waiting for approval from people who don't wish you well, the light finds you on its own. And for the first time, I began to feel happy in a way I'd never let myself feel before. The bridal bouquet was redesigned. No more peonies as originally planned, but lavender and thorned roses instead. I chose them because they're beautiful, strong, and know how to protect themselves. Just like me, no longer fragile but still gentle. I thought that after the confrontation, things would quiet down. But no, my family wasn't going to let go that easily. When they realized they couldn't stop me from having a wedding, they switched to sabotage. It started with a message from my aunt, someone close to my mother, saying she wouldn't be able to attend. "Don't want to get caught in family drama," she wrote, adding a smiling emoji like it was supposed to be comforting. I read it with a chill in my chest, not because I lost a guest, but because I realized who was pulling the strings. A few days later, I got a call from the assistant of the florist I had booked. She apologized profusely for having to cancel the contract without being able to explain why. I was almost certain someone had called them and said something to scare them off. That florist had been recommended by my mother years ago. Maybe she thought she was saving me from myself, or teaching me a lesson about gratitude. Whatever the reason, I was honestly relieved to be dropped. I went online and found a new florist, bolder, more creative, and completely unfamiliar with my mother. Together, we designed a bouquet that would make people stop and stare. When it was finished, I sent a photo to my cousin, who, without thinking, dropped it into the family group chat. And just like that, news spread like wildfire. Within hours, visits to my wedding website tripled. I'm not sure exactly when Bella found out, but I knew she had, because shortly after, she started blocking anyone who posted anything positive about my wedding on Instagram. One cousin was blocked just for sharing a bridesmaid dress try-on photo. An uncle was blocked after commenting, "Wishing you both a lifetime of happiness" on one of my posts. Bella couldn't stand not being the center of attention, even for one day that wasn't hers. I thought it would stay online, but then Jay's mom got a call from my mother. She said she just wanted to talk, mother to mother, to clear the air between the families. I warned her it was a trap, but Jay's mom believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt. She came back from that tea looking like she'd just walked through a hurricane. She sat down, took off her glasses, and rubbed her temples. "I've never seen someone cry and manipulate at the same time as well as your mother," she sighed. For 90 minutes, my mom didn't ask about the wedding, or how I was doing. She just complained about being pushed out of her daughter's life, said this wedding was like a dagger to a mother's heart, and begged Jay's mom to convince me to give it all up so Bella could feel loved again. "She made it sound like your daughter is the villain in some daytime drama," Jay's mom recounted, her voice a mix of bitterness and pity. But instead of getting angry, she simply smiled, stood up, and said, "I think my daughter is doing the right thing." Then she walked out without saying goodbye. I sent her flowers the next morning with a little card that said, "Thank you for choosing justice, not sides," she called back laughing, "and I fully plan to dance like crazy at your wedding too." Maybe, in another life, she would have been my mom. Time moved fast and the wedding day approached. We practiced dancing, tried on outfits, checked lighting, and finalized stage design. Every step of the preparation was a reminder. This was my day, not Bella's, not anyone else's. What touched me most was when Jay secretly had a custom cake-cutting knife made. On the handle he had engraved, "She chose herself." I ran my fingers over the words, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I had never felt so deeply seen. I also placed a secret mailbox at the reception, where guests could drop in a wish or memory for us. No pressure, no fluff. I just wanted to capture what truly mattered that day. The night before the wedding, I stepped out onto the balcony and looked up at the sky. I thought about my mother. I wondered if she missed me, or if she was too busy pouring tea for guests at the reaction party she planned on the same day. And then I whispered, "If you ever loved me, then today, let me love myself." The next morning I woke up early. My heart pounded, not from nerves but excitement. I looked at the wedding dress hanging nearby, beside the bouquet of lavender and thorned roses, a silent declaration. And I knew this day would stay with me forever. Not because they didn't come, but because I stood tall without needing them. The ceremony began under soft golden sunlight, with violins playing what felt like the opening of a new chapter in my life. I walked down an aisle of petals, holding my fierce bouquet, surrounded by beaming faces smiling for me. Jay was waiting at the altar, his eyes shining like the first time he said he loved me. We exchanged vows in front of our friends, our family, and ourselves. Without our parents' blessing, I still felt completely blessed in my own way. Because real love doesn't ask for permission, it just asks for courage. After the ceremony, as Jay and I walked into the reception to the sound of cheers and applause, my cousin rushed up to us, face full of panic and confusion. Someone showed up. They're not on the guest list, she whispered. A chill ran down my spine. Something told me the peace wasn't going to last. Is it Bella? I asked quietly. No, she shook her head. It's Uncle Greg. I blinked. Greg? The uncle who only ever showed up when there was drama? The one who always came bearing bombs? And true to his nature, there he was, standing by the bar, holding a glass of wine and wearing a grin like a cat that just licked all the cream. I walked up to him, calm but firm. I'm surprised to see you here, I said. Family is family, Greg replied, voice smooth as silk, and I couldn't miss the event of the year. I looked at him, waiting for what I already knew was coming. Greg hadn't come to celebrate. He'd come to drop a bomb. He pulled out his phone, opened a screenshot, and showed it to me. It was a message from my mom in a private Facebook group, sent to a few relatives. The message read, "We'll be hosting a small dinner on the same day to create a healing space for Bella." I stared at the words. My mom hadn't just refused to attend my wedding. She'd gone ahead and created an emotional duplicate of it, to overwrite my big day. Greg shrugged. I thought you should know not to ruin anything, but so you understand who you're really dealing with. I nodded, not angry, just deeply sad, like every effort to connect had finally shattered. Then I closed his phone gently and smiled. Well, then you've done what you came here to do. Now drink that drink and have a slice of wedding cake, because it's incredible. After that short talk with Uncle Greg, I returned to the reception hall, where Jay was laughing among friends. I grabbed his hand tightly, like I was reminding myself this happiness was real, no matter what. We cut the cake, raised our glasses, and danced like no one could touch us. The night ended in cheers, laughter, and the soft sparkle of lights from those who stayed until the very end. My parents weren't there, Bella wasn't there, but I didn't feel anything was missing. For the first time in my life, I felt whole, without needing their approval. We left the reception under a rain of flowers, joyful shouts, and tears from those who truly loved me. I looked back through the car window, my heart weightless, like I had just shed an old suit of armor. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a rebirth. 2 months later, Jay and I moved into our first home, a small house filled with sunlight. We planted flowers, cooked meals together, and played music every Sunday morning. Life slowed down but somehow felt deeper than ever before. Then one day, I received an email from my mom. Subject line, "Hope you're doing okay." I laughed before even opening it. She always led with softness before delivering a blow wrapped in careful words. The content was as expected. Bella was going through a hard time, the family was exhausted, and my mom hoped to rebuild things someday. No apology, no acknowledgement that they had done anything wrong. But the final line made me freeze. I hope you're not still holding on to hurt over the wedding. As if the pain was a choice I had deliberately decided to carry. I didn't feel angry, just tired. I showed the email to Jay. He laughed for 5 straight minutes, then asked, "So what are you going to do?" I said, "I'll respond, just not tonight. I want to write a beautiful no." That night, I stayed up late writing, not out of rage, but because I wanted every word to be a period. Elegant, cold, and final. One last time, to shut the rotting door for good. I opened a new email and typed the first line. Dear Mom and Dad, or rather, the people who used to go by those names. I wrote that the wedding had been beautiful, warm, and missing nothing but the 3 people who chose not to be there. If not for this email, I would have forgotten you hadn't come. I wrote that their absence wasn't a wound, it was a gift. It showed me who truly loved me. I ended with, our time apart will continue for another year, with the option for indefinite extension. After 3 rereads, I hit send without hesitation. A week later, while reading in my favorite old bookstore cafe, I saw Bella walk in. She was with a friend, still as polished and beautiful as ever. But when our eyes met, she froze, as if caught in a summer snowstorm. I nodded politely, then sipped my coffee. She moved with her friend to another corner, but less than 10 minutes later, she returned, alone. It seemed she still wasn't used to not being the center of every room. She stood in front of me, hands clasped, voice soft. "You look good." I nodded, "Thanks." An awkward silence sat between 2 people who had once shared both childhood and emotional battlegrounds. Then she bit her lip, glanced at the table, and asked, "Are you really never going to talk to them again?" I shrugged. "Depends on whether they ever stop protecting you at all costs." She was silent, like it was the first time she'd heard that without someone rushing to defend her. "I miss you," she said, but I didn't respond right away. I simply asked, "Do you actually miss me, or do you miss having someone to blame whenever you felt ignored?" She said nothing. Her eyes flicked to my book like she was searching for shelter from the storm. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry." I'm sorry, two light words as if they could wipe away years of damage. But there was no for what, no details, no ownership. Just a hollow apology, like a greeting card without a name. I nodded, not to forgive, but to close the chapter. I hope you're okay, I said, and I meant it. What I didn't say was, I hope you grow up, at least once in your life. I picked up my coffee, stood up, and walked away without looking back. No tears, no drama, just a silence soft as wind. Turns out, ending a relationship doesn't require an explosion, just peace. I used to think freedom would come from a final, furious fight, but it didn't. It came when I realized I no longer needed to be heard, understood, or validated. I just needed to live my own way. A week later, I received a handwritten letter from my father. No envelope, no stamp, just folded in quarters like a clumsy apology. I smiled faintly at the sight of his familiar handwriting, now out of place on the blank page. In the letter, he wrote about burned bridges, lost time, and wounds that never healed. He said he missed me, wanted to meet, to talk like adults. And in that moment, I imagined an awkward lunch, him ordering coffee, me checking the time. I folded the letter and placed it in the recycling bin next to the kitchen cabinet. Not because I hated him, but because I no longer needed it. In this house, we recycle what we can't use, including memories. That evening, I opened a small bottle of wine, took a sip, and gazed at the garden in the backyard. The lavender was in bloom, and the thorny roses stood tall and proud. I thought, maybe I don't need my mother or my father or even the apology done the right way, just the freedom I fought for and finally claimed. A few weeks later, I got an invitation from Uncle Greg for the annual family gathering at his place. Everyone knew the party wasn't about the food. Uncle Greg is a terrible cook, but for the hot gossip that always came with his olive martinis. Jay and I decided to go, not out of curiosity, but because we finally felt strong enough that nothing could hurt us anymore. When we arrived, the room was already buzzing. People were whispering, passing stories like little speakers in a secret communication system. I hadn't even asked anything when one of my aunts pulled me aside, eyes sparkling like she'd just seen the finale of a thriller. "Did you hear? Bella joined an international volunteer organization," she whispered. I froze, not out of surprise, but because I couldn't imagine Bella agreeing to wash dishes without a dishwasher. But it was true. She'd left the city, left the familiar gaze of admiration behind. Uncle Greg came over soon after, poured me a drink, and winked like an official messenger. "She really left," he said. "Biggest plot twist since your wedding. Guess someone finally told her to live for someone else for once." My parents were there too, standing in the corner like two statues trying to blend into the party. They looked tired, out of place, visibly older. I didn't walk toward them, but I didn't avoid them either. I simply let them see me, whole, unbroken, and unbowed. Jay leaned in and whispered, "You win. This really is the plot twist of the year." I laughed, nodded, and raised my glass to his. The feeling of no longer carrying resentment was incredibly light. On the drive home, I thought about Bella, maybe for the first time without anger or sarcasm. Maybe she'll find a part of herself in a place where no one knows her name, where no one calls her the center. And if that happens, I'd be genuinely happy for her. Back home, I stepped into our backyard, where the lavender and thorned roses still bloomed under the moonlight. I placed an old hairbrush on the stone table, the one my mother once gave to Bella instead of me. Then I tucked it gently into the rosebush, like a message without a recipient. It's time everything returned to where it belongs. When I went back inside, Jay had already made tea and was waiting for me on the couch. He put on soft music, and I sat beside him, resting my head on his shoulder. In that moment, I knew I had closed a chapter of my life. Not with a slammed door, but with a deep, steady breath. And what about you? If someone you love asked you to give up your happiness just to please someone else, would you sacrifice, or would you rise and reclaim your own light? Because somewhere out there, maybe there's another sister, another daughter, facing the same choice I once had to make.